All right. Good evening, everybody. It's 4 o'clock, and we will bring the Kerrville City Council workshop to order. And any public comments, Shelley? All righty. And I'd just like to point out everything that we're discussing tonight. First of all, we are just discussing, and we're not making any decisions. But all four of these things, if we get to the housing, they all stem from the 2050 comprehensive plan. So with that, who's up first?
Well, Julie, I'll just quickly introduce you.
Okay.
Julie Davis from the Kerrville Convention and Visitors Bureau is here, along with a whole cadre of other folks and board members. And so they've got some very exciting news to present to you all. And so I'll just turn it over to Julie.
Wonderful.
Hi.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We appreciate the time today. Oh, the mouse was moving. It was throwing me off. I could just see it moving around. I'm not used to the new system yet. But anyway, thank you for giving this time. We're excited to be here. We want to present, I guess, actually reveal our brand and messaging that we're going to start, I guess, officially today, since this will be the reveal. But first, I want to introduce a few new faces that are with me today. I've got... They stood like in line of what's on my list too. Anne Marie Shar, as well as Suzanne Feasel. Is it Feasel? Okay, yeah. I thought it was Feasel, but I just call them by their first names because they're just about family now. And Jonathan Smith, and they're all with the Arsenal advertising team that we've been working with for the past, I don't know, about 6 months maybe. So anyway, we're excited. We're excited to have reached this point. It's been a journey, and to show you the new brand for Kerrville as a destination, I think you're going to be wowed and love it. These three, as well as the rest of the Arsenal team, have been working closely with us to really pull back the layers, discover who we are as a visitor destination, and how we can tell that story to a broad audience. As you might remember, we started looking for an agency last summer. We went through an RFP process. Finalists were selected by a committee. The finalists presented to our board, and then the board voted these guys in. So they're out of Austin. Yeah, go team. In September, they really hit the ground running, working with us. They had a 2-day immersion tour. They came to Kerrville. They visited Kerrville as tourists. I had made suggestions of places they should go to, things like that, but really wanted them to explore the town as if someone just showed up and wanted to do something here versus a tour I take them on. They're going to have a very different experience if I walk in. They went to attractions, restaurants, parks, downtown, museums, you name it, right? Yeah. They went to wineries, breweries. They went to all of it.
The river.
Yeah, the river, right. And then following that, we worked together to host some focus groups. So at that point, we gathered valuable information from our industry partners here in Kerrville. So those focus groups included the city manager, restaurant owners, shops, museums, people who run events, wineries, hoteliers, and short-term rental property owners as well, and probably people I'm not remembering. But in November, our board voted to move forward with a complete rebrand and messaging strategy. After that, we continued more work, and those ideas have moved us to where we are today. The board approved this new branding and messaging in February, and this is our official unveiling. I don't want to steal any more of their thunder. They have a lot to say, and they're really excited and passionate about it too. They really are like new Kerrville residents now, even though they send their mail to Austin.
I got the ticket, so I'm definitely.
And so I know they're passionate about it, and they want to talk to go through the concepts with you as well. And there you go. Anne Marie's up next, and I'm going to sit down.
Thank you so much for having us, you guys. We're really excited to be here tonight. We are going to present 2 parts to you. Suzanne's going to present the messaging, and then Jonathan will present the creative and branding.
Thank you.
Great job.
So a quick project overview. Julie mentioned some of these items, but our brand project included defining a brand positioning, so going a little bit beyond the logos, colors, and fonts, which we also did. Create refreshed messaging, detailed brand guidelines for the Kerrville CBB, and also we'll have new marketing materials as our next step now that we have an improved brand. But everything we do when we're branding, we always want to root in research. So like Julie mentioned, we did the focus groups and interviews. We came and we explored as tourists. We did a very thorough competitor analysis. We reviewed all the analytics we could find on the back end of the website and things like that, social media, and then also assessed the current brand to make sure we had the lay of the land before making any recommendations. So we wanted to just go through some of the feedback that we received in the discovery process. So praise, which there was a lot of. Some of the items that came up a lot were how Kerrville is an undiscovered hidden gem. The words hometown, small town were often used, hospitality, friendliness. The pioneer and entrepreneurial spirit was mentioned quite often. We talked a lot about just kind of an artistic, creative vibe here, innovative. We talked a lot about how Kerrville is an escape from the city, from the noise, just how beautiful and serene it is. It's a nice, quiet place to relax. A central location and proximity to San Antonio and Houston, and then also the headwaters of the Guadalupe. A lot of praise about Kerrville. On the concern side, most of the concerns stemmed around wanting to really protect the integrity of, being an undiscovered gem and attracting the right crowd and controlling the growth so we don't feel overcrowded or have any kind of river pollution or riffraff or anything like that. Also limited indoor activities for families and younger adults came up. Seasonality of the river was something that was also mentioned, although we do have a lot of time in Texas with sunny days to use the river. Some dated lodging and meeting locations, business hours downtown being a bit inconsistent, activities being spread out across Kerrville, and then also some challenges for the service industry and cost of living. And we also wanted to share some direct quotes that were spoken by the participants in our research, some good, some bad, so we wanted to show both of those. So it's missing that one big thing. As much as Kerrville changes, it stays the same. Build your own good time. You go to Kerrville for a lot of little reasons. There's something to discover around every corner. Visitors say they'll be back. Visitors are staying in Boerne or Fredericksburg. People are surprised by all that Kerrville has to offer. It pairs well with others, little wine pun there. And it's a breath of fresh air. So mostly positive, but we always like to, see both sides of the perspective. And then we also asked our participants about the brand itself, the logo and the tagline. And so we mostly got feedback around the logo feeling dated or maybe not differentiated from surrounding cities, feeling duplicated, and also just that current logo has the hills and the river, the sort of silhouette, and that Kerrville is a lot more than just the hills and the river. Which also ties to the feedback for the tagline, which currently is Capital of the Hill Country. And so, again, wanting to feel more reflective of the full Kerrville experience and not simply just the Hill Country location, and also why that mattered. Why does it matter to be the capital of the Hill Country? So with all of that research, we really wanted to think critically about the direction of the new brand and how do we answer that question for the Kerrville CBB of who are we? So our goals for the new brand were to move beyond the Hill Country location, to give the brand an authentic and homegrown quality, to adhere to the ideal of discovery and capture the full extent of Kerrville's offerings, to modernize the brand and attract a younger audience, and also to bring forward the idea of really creating your own experience. And so even some of the negative things that came out, we wanted to try to spin those positively. So, being able to craft your experience because things might be more spread out, that can be a fun adventure. So our recommendations for the brand included first pillars, and typically pillars are sort of our foundational elements of the brand, and we weave all of our messaging around them. So our first pillar is outdoor. Obviously, we have our sparkling waters, the surrounding green hills, and just the natural landscapes and outdoor experiences. We have nostalgia. We heard a lot about generational travelers who came when they were kids and now they're coming back with their grandchildren, or campers that came when they were younger. And then, of course, some of the history of the town and the craftsmen that have kind of shaped the culture. So nostalgia was a big factor. And then culture, as I just mentioned, a lot of art and innovation in the town, the James Avery craftsmen, just a very diverse and unique experience that people can have when they're here downtown or around the city. And then culinary, we were really surprised when we came to eat. We travel to a lot of hill country towns and we see a lot of the same type of fare. And when we came here, we were really surprised by the craft cuisine and the healthy cuisine. Felt more on par with, what we see in the bigger cities. So we wanted to make sure to include that as a differentiator and a pillar to stand on. And then our visitor experience, we've also defined, which will be woven throughout the pillars, so it should come across through all of our messaging. Those are welcoming, so greeted with a smile, feels like home, a friendly face. Retreat, like we mentioned, being an escape from the noise and just the crowded, find a parking place more easily, that type of thing. Creativity, of course, there's a lot of creators and innovators here in Kerrville, and you do a great job of promoting the local artisans. And then wellness, which is a bit of a new idea that we wanted to fold in. Wellness tourism right now is very big and drives a lot of travel, especially since COVID. And so we wanted to highlight the natural infrastructure that is already in place for wellness travelers with the natural assets, and then also the healthy cuisine. And then we have new audiences that we defined as part of the brand. We have 5 audiences: empty nesters, those that can sort of enjoy the slower pace and take their time to have a cup of coffee and enjoy the views. We have our families that are looking for maybe more affordable experiences or things to do outside on a budget. We have our millennials, so again, trying to attract a younger audience. These millennials and Gen Z are typically looking for unique experiences, things they can't find somewhere else. Their selfie spots or Instagrammable places to see. We have our wellness travelers who typically want to continue their healthy lifestyle. So they will seek out what's already kind of in line with how they eat at home or how they, have an active lifestyle. And then legacy visitors, again, like we mentioned, who might have come as a child and now they want to bring their family back, and they kind of enjoy that nostalgia aspect of going to places like Gibson's that kind of bring back those memories. And then as part of the brand, we also examined the mission statement for the CVB, and we felt like it was missing the why. It was really capturing the what they do. So we created this new mission statement. I'll read that for you. With the spirit of innovation that founded our town, the Kerrville Convention and Visitors Bureau seeks to inspire visitors in their discovery of Kerrville's unique offerings and to enrich the quality of life for our local community. So that felt like we really hit on the locals as well in that. And then new positioning. So this was really exciting, trying to really find a home for Kerrville and who are we? What do we represent that's different from some of the other surrounding towns and competitors? And crafted was a word that we really kept coming back to. It really tied to a lot of different things. And so we have those outlined here to kind of further explain this positioning, which is really the foundation of the new brand that we've built. So the pioneer spirit and entrepreneurial, we've talked about that, but really that history, and we've got, the pioneers that settled the area and craftsmen like James Avery that have continued to shape that spirit. We have crafted experiences, so again, being able to explore Kerrville in their own way, come up with their own itinerary. culture and inclusivity. So we have our historic downtown, museums, art, a lot of different ways to learn and explore when you're here in Kerrville. Artisans and innovation, again, just unique and eclectic experiences that inspire people who visit and also help them to be more creative when they leave Kerrville. Craft food and drink, so locally crafted healthy fare, really not what you would expect when you visit a lot of small towns, so we wanted to make sure that was in the forefront. And then, of course, the nature and natural beauty that just crafts the experience. So we created a new brand statement, which I will read. It's a bit long. From artisans and craftsmen to brewers and craft cuisine, the entrepreneurial spirit that founded our hill country town still shapes visitor discoveries today. Feel inspired as you stroll our historic downtown, shop at local boutiques, or pedal through rolling hills. Just as the river crafts its own path through town, we invite you to craft your own experience in Kerrville. So that really is meant to capture the sentiment of everything we just presented. And then we have a word bank that we've provided to the CVB that they can use as they're continuing to do posts on social media and things like that that will help stay in line with the brand. And I will pass it to Jonathan to present the new brand.
So enough talking, we're gonna see some visuals now. I'm just kidding. She did a great job. You've heard about the research that we've done. You've heard about the pillars that we've talked about. We heard about the visitor experience. So how does that feel and how does it make you feel? We're about to reveal the brand to y'all, and we created a short video to kind of just get y'all that feeling. Before I tell y'all how the brand works and what's all behind the brand, I wanted y'all to feel it first. So here we go.
The past meets the present in beautifully crafted Kerrville, Texas. Our hill country town embodies our history, from the courageous pioneers who settled the area to brilliant craftsmen like James Avery, who cultivated the entrepreneurial spirit that still thrives today. Visitors feel inspired as they stroll our historic downtown, uncover an antique gem, pedal through riverside trails, find the perfect artisan gift, or enjoy a handcrafted meal. Kerrville's green hills and sparkling waters set the tone for a peaceful and relaxed visit to the Texas Hill Country. Just as the Guadalupe River crafts its own path through Kerrville, visitors can craft their own experience. Texas, crafted beautifully.
Awesome. So we're gonna get in the brand right away. This is the primary logo that we've created, and I'm gonna get into what all we did and how we did it, but we created a completely custom typeface for the brand. So we chose a really modern typeface, and we added spires to it, or arrows or elements to it, to give it kind of a nostalgic feel. But let me just show you kind of the versatility of how the logo works. So this is the actual mark, and so if you have small elements like social media or things like that, this will fit in those small spaces. There might be spaces that are more square. This might work better for that. And this is your secondary logo. And what's cool about this, it splits the word Kerr and Ville, and it kind of throws a subtle nod to Major Kerr of what the town is named after. I'm going to show you other elements of the logo and kind of how it worked, but not only does it have different variations that it goes to, your primary or secondary versions where you have the tagline and your CVV under it, but also has your secondary logo and then your mark, and these are fonts, just your typefaces that, for instance, if you're doing a bumper sticker or something very horizontal, it's digital or social media, you'll be able to just use those logos also. That's the brand. And then, talking about the elements, just how it might look on different things. So, when you get your private Kerrville jet, that's how it might look. Your mugs, merchandise, and then social media, talking about how that mark works. Awesome. Just kind of want to show you all. So we want to kind of show you also how we stand out from our competitors, how we're heads and shoulders above the rest. And you can kind of see how, and these are from all over the country. We picked everyone from Birmingham to Nashville to Austin. And you can see that our logo really stands out amongst the crowd and looks really cool. So we're going to get into the elements of the logo that Are you showing the logo?
Oh, I have.
What are we doing here? You can see that there's elements, the blues and the greens of the color palette connect naturally to Kerrville's rolling hills and sparkling waters. You can see the subtle leaves. And we mentioned these leaves could change through colors if they're holidays and things like that. Let's go to the next, sorry. The nostalgia portion of it, we mentioned the font of it, but also the crest-shaped shield also has a nod to some of the historical markers throughout the town. Culture, just the fact that it's completely handcrafted. This is something that we made that no one else has. So we took a very modern font and mixed it with that historical feel to give us that nostalgia from, from people who camped or have ranches. That kind of those little arches really have a nod towards that, but also that modern sans serif font, or without feet. If y'all don't know what sans serif is, but it's like a Helvetica. But yeah, I don't know, a little too much. Anyway, but also the aspect of it, if you kind of look at it, also kind of looks like a charm. I mean, it kind of has that aspect of that handcrafted feel of a charm for James Avery. Last, you can also see the greens in it. It kind of represents the healthy fare that we've talked about in those pillars, but also you can kind of see like a little plate in there. We're a little stretching there, but you can see like a little plate in there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're just so you know, we're just so honored to be here and to really take this logo to the next level for you guys. And we're really proud of the work that we were able to do. And y'all were so welcoming. Everybody here, from all the restaurants that we ate at to all the wineries, everything that we did, everybody was super awesome. So we really appreciate y'all.
Appreciate it. Thank you. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Julie, you may want to give us just a little bit of
Yeah.
rollout from here on out, and the rest of the marketing campaign rollout.
Yeah, so we're already working, obviously, while you might have figured out Jonathan's the creative side of things. So while he's working on that, Anne Marie and I have been working on the rollout of media and there's the strategy of where those ads will be, all of that. Suzanne's working on literally the messaging piece. So there's all these different things happening at one time, but this was kind of the big unveil so that people could see it. We could start putting it out and talking about it. And then I think next week our social channels, okay, April 10th, our social channels will all change. If you saw the visitor's guide for the Daily's Time this weekend, I had woven in a little bit of the verbiage because they told me it wouldn't come out till April. And then this weekend they put it in the paper and I was like, but all I did was change some of the wording so it matched a little, like using their word bank that they provided. So it's already sneaking in places, if you will. Some of the digital ads we've done already had the wording in there. But as far as logo and actual seeing it printed, it's as fast as we can get it printed. Because now I have all the files. They've delivered all the files to me. We have the fonts, all of that. So probably May is the first print ad, right? Okay.
Quick.
So, yeah. Now that we made it to this point, we're ready. But yeah, we've worked really hard on hitting the different audiences, where they are. I think the media plan, is it about 60% digital? Isn't that right? Yeah. So.
Are you going to be playing that video?
It's up to y'all. I think it's your asset. Y'all own it.
I'm
So-
sure we will somewhere, yes.
We'll
Okay.
probably use it in social.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
'cause
also like the landing page on the website too.
my only feedback,
Let's fix it.
Now is the time.
yes, before, I would just appreciate seeing a life jacket on that little boy.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's a,
Because he's on the pier, yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
that's it.
Valid.
Otherwise,
No, that's
I love it.
that's a good one. That's
So-
I'll
important.
digitally.
Thank you. Yes,
Or we'll
that's,
replace it with
No,
something
and
else.
we've had a child,
Yes.
unfortunately, we've had a tragedy in
We
the past
did.
year or two,
Understood.
so,
So
yeah,
we'll take
no,
that into
that is
consideration.
actually a really valid one. And we want to talk about them now,
yes,
before.
right, before it gets unveiled to the public, I
Yes,
sure
yes.
would like to see a life jacket on that child.
Places we don't want it from.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's the main goal, is to really, we wanted to share it with you guys, get you excited about it, I hope.
Very exciting.
And then you'll start seeing it everywhere. We've already ordered some flags and staff shirts and stuff like that, but
Nice.
yeah, in the next month or two, really. But on social, all of our channels will kind of transition to a Kerrville Crafted type name. and then our website will redirect, and hopefully in the next 6 to 8 months, we'll get a whole new website. Right now, we're just gonna make updates to the current website, one thing at a time, but, yeah. Because that's a big undertaking, but
Yeah.
it's been 6 years since that site was created. We had an update, I believe it was in 2019 or
I
2020.
think so, yeah.
So it's time for an update anyway. We just couldn't crank it out at the same time as this, so. Is there any other questions?
I love.
I
the
hope you're
being
excited.
very-
Not for, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
y'all.
excited
Great
about
job,
it.
thank you
Yes.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much.
giving us time.
Thank you all.
Like Kerrville crafted.
All right, exciting things.
Yeah.
It's great. And with that, I didn't mean we weren't making decisions with that. I was referring to the next couple things coming up here, so.
Right, right.
So, thank you all, and thank you for all the hard work. That's great. Okay, we are ready now for unsafe building abatement and with junk vehicles. And this is what, I just want our public to understand that we're not going out tomorrow and tear down buildings and remove cars from yards and anything of that nature. This is just discussion and looking towards the possibility of some processes, some things that maybe can help us manage these things better.
You are correct.
So these are a couple of Kerrville 2050 goals that were identified almost 4 years ago. We have worked these in from a staff review process, over the last 12 months as we've been able to work it into our work program of other major code amendments. We do have, as you'll see from Mr. Garcia's presentation today, we do have some elements of these codes already within our existing codes. However, as we've looked through them, they're not as strong as what we'd like them to be and not as clear as we would like them to be. And that's really what today is about, is to get feedback from you all as community policymakers to make sure that the codes are matched up with what your intent is for the programmatic regulatory components that you want us to have in place.
I imagine all of us at one point or another have had citizens concerned about adjoining or neighborhood properties that are causing health and safety issues to me, this is really a way to enforce health and safety for the community, not to come in and tell someone what color to paint their house, but for unsafe, unsanitary situations that cause harm to other properties and to our citizens. I think this is important.
Mr. Garcia, go ahead. Take the
I
floor.
understand this is a birthday day for you.
It is my birthday.
Shelley too.
And Shelley,
Shelley
she walked out,
McElhannon.
but me and Shelley say,
Yeah, the double whammy.
yeah, Shelley and I celebrate the best day ever. So, happy birthday. Thank you. So good afternoon. As Mr. Hoppy described, the presentation of today is to describe some of the changes and some of the upgrades that we want to make to the two ordinances, because ultimately, as you said, it's going to have a major impact on the neighborhoods and how we're trying to ultimately improve the neighborhood so that they are a lot prettier, that they're a lot more welcoming, and try to eliminate some areas that maybe need to be removed, some homes. And so in the PowerPoint, you'll see in the appendix, I gave you a copy of the PowerPoint. In the appendix, you will see some pictures of there's not all of them, it's a good sampling of some of the potential unsafe structures that exist in the city at this time. And so eventually we would like to address those, and with the upgrade to these ordinance, I think we can address some of these unsafe structures. So as Mr. Hoppy mentioned earlier, the Kerrville 2050, that I could find, I did a quick search, but if I could find these three particular items, action items within the Kerrville 2050 highlight that the drive as to why we need to update our ordinances. The first one being H2.6, which is implement an effective demolition program for substandard structures. That is one, that's the preliminary one, because that one and C5.5 are identical. And then the next one is enforce the current minimum property standards for homes, structures, and maintenance, and increase proactive code enforcement. So we want to make sure that we're trying our best to help our citizens to help beautify the city as a whole. So we'll start with the unsafe building abatement ordinance. This ordinance was last updated on October 27th, 1998. We presented our recommended changes to the BBNA in February, and they voted unanimously to recommend with two recommended changes. I will highlight those recommended changes as they appear in the presentation. Most importantly, unsafe structures have the potential to present a danger to the community, as they can present a fire hazard, they can harbor rodents and other animals, unsafe for human habitation, and the potential for reduction in property values and be unsightfulness. So one of the things I've done here in the following slides, I have highlighted some of the major changes and highlighted in bold for your reference. So it kind of gives you an idea of the changes that we've made to the ordinances. You will see the numbers change a little bit just because we've added some additional sections. And when I go by section, I didn't add all the sections in this PowerPoint. Some of the sections that you'll see are actually in the appendix. You can find those, but I left the big ones that I thought would be more prevalent for discussion today. But you can see on here, like on this first page that I have here, 26-228, declarations, an update and a change. The restriction on employees, that's an added item to the ordinance. The liability, the requirements not covered by this article. And again, these are the ones I'm going to talk a little bit about during the presentation itself. I'll give you a second to kind of just digest those, because there's a lot of sections in this particular ordinance itself. And then, of course, the last one's on here, the duty to secure unoccupied buildings and the offense itself. And then these are the last ones. So in the definitions, one of the things that we wanted to do is we were wanting to expand the definitions from 1 definition to 11 definitions. And that's just to provide clarity. These definitions are meant to bring clarity to the various to the definitions that we use in the ordinance, but also connect them to the IBC and the IRC. The BBA recommended that we add a definition to these sets that are here, and that definition is dwelling. And dwelling is defined as any building that contains 1 or 2 dwelling units used, intended, or designed to be built, used, rented, or leased, let, or hired out to be occupied, or that are occupied for the living purposes. And that's a direct definition from the IRC.
Is that reflected in this?
No, not in this change yet,
Okay.
because it's just a recommended change. And if y'all agreed, then I think I would work with Mike to get it into the proposed ordinance.
Okay. And before we continue, can I just clarify something with
Yes,
the document that we have in place right now? This is going to be replacing that chapter in its entirety, so we won't see like this is struck and then this is inserted. It's all just completely rewritten, kind of.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it. There's some of the
There's
same.
there's
but
some
we
that are the
won't see
same, but
all
yes.
that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, the intent is to replace it in its entirety.
Right. Okay.
And especially when we get to the junk vehicle piece, you'll see that as a rewrite completely.
Okay.
The declaration, as you can see here, what I've done in this presentation, you'll see where it's not showing up. So what I was trying to do is show you the before and the after. So in this situation with the declaration, it did not exist in the current ordinance, and so now this is the declaration that will exist. This is declaring that all unsafe buildings are a public nuisance, and the current ordinance infers this, and this statement clarifies it.
I want to make sure I'm looking at the right things.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at this PowerPoint and this?
Yes,
Is that
so
correct?
what we've done, I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. So what we've done is I've given you the PowerPoint just so that you can see everything that's involved, because I'm not going to cover the appendix in here, so you have those pictures and some of the other sections that I'm not covering in the presentation. So you have that, and then you also have a copy of the current
So this
ordinance.
is current.
That's current, I'm sorry, yes. And then you have another one, which is the proposed ordinance that says draft all over it. And I think you have two copies of that, yeah.
This
So
one.
one color and one black.
Yeah, one color and one black and white. And-
Okay.
And someone beat me to the punch on that one. That's why you have
Okay,
two of
and
them.
so then when we get to junk vehicles, it'll be the same thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that this is the current one?
Yeah, the one that doesn't say draft is the one that's current.
Okay, this is, okay.
Okay, so it's probably best just to kind of hear what you're saying now and then to go.
The intent for
through
today is just to go through the high policy
Right,
components.
and then
which is
I
what-
can use these as backup on my
Yes, ma'am.
own when
That's
I'm
right.
kind of going through
That's right. And
everything.
based off of feedback today, we will
Okay.
redline the draft that we've already created. And we'll
Okay.
get that to you all, try to get it to you 10 days in advance, based off the timeline that you guys give us. But we're intending, Guillermo will get into it later, but we're intending to bring this back to you in April.
So you're saying this is our first draft?
Mhm.
This is going over some high points of the changes.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Based on conversations today, we may get a red line of this.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay. This red line would not refer to, like Councilmember Garcia was saying, to our other
It's
ordinance.
not gonna be a red line from the current version. It's
The
gonna be
new
a red
version.
line from our
Okay,
draft.
okay, so I think for me, I'm just gonna kind of flow with you today, and then I'll follow up on my own time.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's good, it's good. No, I think this is great, I just wanna know how to use it,
So we
yep,
wanna go ahead and get it for any in case it was a
absolutely,
reference.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next section here, this section clarifies who is ultimately responsible for the enforcement of this ordinance. The major change that occurred was the removal of BBNA. BBA serves as a quasi-judicial board that can issue orders based on the evidence that is presented before it. The chief building official is responsible for evaluating a structure or dwelling to determine if it is unsafe for habitation. So that's their role. The next section did not exist before. This new section would make it clear that staff or the board shall not have a financial interest in the furnishing of labor, material, or appliances for the construction, alteration, demolition, repair of the building. This next section does not exist in the current ordinance as well. This new section clarifies that the chief building official or BBA are relieved from all personal liability, and their actions, if done within the scope of their duties, will be defended by the city. The right of entry section was mainly rewritten to provide a bit more clarity on how the chief building official may enter a building. Section C has been included that discusses identification and failure to permit an inspection. This next section, which is public utilities, is no major changes to this section of the code. The biggest change is the removal of the title of the subsections. That's the biggest difference. In offenses, this section, for the most part, went unchanged in language. Item 3 and item 4 were combined because they both address the placard that's placed on the structures themselves. The time and notice, in this section, the major changes were the removal of the title of the subsections. The language is pretty much identical. In this section has a few more changes. The first change is a clarification in the language in Section A. Section B removed the official newspaper to a newspaper of general circulation. Section C requires communication to any mortgage or lien holder. And Section D, that if a person is unable to be served, that this does not prohibit the proceedings to move forward. An example of this is if an owner has passed away and we've made every attempt to contact the family members, lien holders, or mortgagees, in which we've actually had a couple examples of that. We haven't really been able to move on those properties because the family members passed and some family members don't want anything to do with the property, and so it's, okay, where do we go from here? So this really helps us in that section. This section consolidates a few subsections, however, the biggest change is the statement of subsection 2. This section was reworded for the most part to provide a bit more clarity and also remove the title of the subsections. The subsection 2, the BBA recommended their second change to the language in the current and proposed ordinance. So the current section, the last sentence says, repairs shall be deemed feasible if only less than 50% of the structure or the building must be repaired or replaced. The new section reads as follows: repairs may, that's the key word, only be deemed feasible if less than 50% of the structure or the building must be repaired or replaced. BBA recommended changing the building to dwelling, and that's one of the reasons why they asked for the definition of dwelling to be added to the definitions. And what they're recommending is to add to dwelling. A structure is defined as a structure, means that which is built or constructed, an edifice or building of any kind, or any piece of work artificially built up or composed of parts joined together in some definite manner or any part thereof in the proposed ordinance. That's the definition that we have here. In the IBC, it means that which is built or constructed.
So that's the second amendment that they've recommended for us after this adoption, or after this was presented to them, right?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a list of those too, so we can reference, and we can just visually see the text?
Yes, we can do that for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just that one section, changing out, on this section here, one is the definition, adding the definition of dwelling, that's the first change. And then the second change is changing out where it says repairs, building must be, the structure or the building, and they're recommending, leaving the structure or the dwelling must be repaired or replaced.
Okay, so to follow up on that again, because I'm still feeling like I need to make sure, when you're saying that the after and you're specifically talking about proposed changes from PBAA, are those
Those would be
reflected in
for the new
draft?
ordinance.
But
The
they're
draft.
already reflected in the draft? or
No, not yet, not yet.
We will
Okay.
highlight those specific ones within the draft, in addition to any suggestions you all have.
Okay, and I know we got some backup materials on this beforehand. Did we get this as a backup material? Because I can't read.
Yeah, no,
I'm
I can,
listening to you, but like, I'm not able to, I don't have my readers on.
Yeah.
And if I could look at it on a computer screen.
We could definitely provide that. It was some last minute changes that
That's
we were trying to
okay.
make,
I just want to make sure I'm doing this.
and the slides were about 80 pages, so I was like, well, let me
No,
double
that's
them up
fine.
so they're not taking up so much paper.
Yeah, I understand what you're
Yeah.
doing. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
But yes,
on
we can get
that.
those to you.
Okay.
In my opinion, under appeal, in my opinion, I'm sure that Mike would agree that this is probably the most important change to the ordinance. This new section provides clear instructions that an owner, lien holder, and/or mortgagee have the right to appeal the district court and the time frame in which they must submit their appeal. This is where some of the bigger cities have gotten into trouble and consequently ended up in lawsuits. So this is very important that we be very clear as to what resources the homeowner or mortgagee or leasee have once the BBNA gives an order to do X, Y, Z. And so they can appeal to a district court.
What does VTCA stand for?
That,
Vernon's,
Oh.
Texas.
yeah, something,
Codes,
I don't remember exactly what it stands for.
thank you. We got it.
Team.
What is it?
Vernon's,
It's a
Anteg
book
Texas
that-
Code.
That publishes statutes for the state.
We're getting really loud.
Yeah.
it's in the Final Four in the basketball.
Yeah.
So I want to just quickly highlight this piece, because this is a really important component in addition to the piece that goes in front of the quasi judicial board affiliated with the city. It's about due process, right? This is private property, and we have to make sure that the due process components are very, very strong in regard to any time we're dealing with private property, right? However, that's a balance with the health, safety, and welfare of the community, not only of those adjacent neighbors, and the effects that you all elaborated on earlier, but the general safety of the public that may be passing by an unsafe structure, and potentially, could enter into that property, which is in an unsafe condition. And so that's the balance that we have, but we're trying to make recommendations to enhance that due process component, so we are making sure that we're ensuring private property rights.
This is another section that does not exist in the current ordinance. The proposed section provides clear direction on the responsibility of the owner on securing the unsafe structure if it is unoccupied. An example would be a home in which nobody is living in and no one plans to live in the home for some time. It's the responsibility of the owner to ensure that it is secured. This is another section that does not exist in the current ordinance. This new section outlines that it is an offense to allow a structure to remain unsecured. And anything for prior offenses, this section does not exist in the current ordinance. This new section outlines the civil penalties that can be assessed. Prior offenses, this is another new section. This takes into account any previously identified unsafe structures. And in the appendix, you'll find additional changes that were proposed to the ordinance. And in the interest of time, I highlighted again what we felt was the major changes to the proposed new ordinance, and in the back of the appendix, you also see a list of potential unsafe structures that exist out in the community. And that was something that we took on as an initiative from basically October until about mid-January, when we finally finished collecting those examples from the neighborhoods itself. Any particular questions for the unsafe structures before we move on to the junk vehicles?
I didn't see that last one here in the attachment that we have, the
Yeah, the
253
253.
253?
in this draft.
It's not on here either.
No, okay, I'll just make sure I wasn't missing something. Oh, it's on the black
Yeah, there's
and
one
white.
that-
one.
There's a typo on there, it's 252 twice. I believe this is the one that's 252 twice.
Oh, yes, okay. You're right, on the black and white version. it
Yeah, on
is.
the black and white version.
Okay.
Yeah, and even on the red version here, if you go to the last page 15, it'll say, civil penalties, 26252 civil penalties, and then below that, section 26252, prior offenses. So that's a typo. I didn't see that till earlier this morning
Okay.
when I was making some of my final changes.
It should be 253.
Yeah, it should be 253.
Okay.
I changed it here, but I didn't get to change it on y'all's.
Okay.
Okay. One thing I noticed is a lot of the section titles, almost all of them, I think, are removed. What was the reason behind doing that? Just because visually, for me, whenever I'm looking at a section and then there's a subsection and there's multiple clauses in that section, when I look at the current one, it's just visually easy to say, this is exactly where I go in those subsections to find what I need.
Sure.
Just curious as to the reason why those were all removed.
I think it was just clarity of just when we were typing it out, it was nothing specific as to why we didn't include them. It was just, as we were typing, it was just something we went through.
Okay.
You mean like these headings here?
Right.
And not, as opposed to these type headings?
Well, including both, so right now, if you look at like section 26-237, just because that's the one I'm looking at right now, the section is titled Notice, Publication, Time of Notice, and then there's subsection A that said Notice sent to owner, B said Publication of Notice, and so on. Those subsections that were in italics were removed, and it just now has just the verbiage for those subsections. So, oh, hi. Go ahead.
Go ahead, no, finish, please.
That's basically what I was just pointing out, those differences.
Yeah, there may be some differences. You know, this is a complete rewrite of what we had before. And, you know, one of the two tasks I was charged with when I first started here was the right-of-way ordinance and the substandard building ordinance. That was 21 and a half years ago. So now we're here, and what I intend by that is, since that time, I've cobbled together what works for other cities and what doesn't work, and so I'm sure this ordinance is based upon, I forget which city I used, but it was a city that I both like the way it's written, and I trust the city attorneys and the staff that's there, and so that's what I go with. The other thing too, and I've learned this over the years, is the less language you can have in a document, period, the better. And that's my opinion. It's easier to explain to people. It's easier certainly for us when we actually have to enforce it or go to court. Because if you add section titles or anything of that nature, then what I like to do is be consistent. And so if there's a A1 that has a subject title to it, then everywhere else in the ordinance, I'm going to try to put that in. And so you're talking about what, 50, 100 more words? And so I just try, that's just the way I draft stuff.
Okay, that makes total sense. I was just wondering if there was any other reason besides, okay, thank you.
I just want to ask, okay, so y'all drafted this ordinance, and then it went to BBAA. They proposed some ideas of changes, and we'll get a copy of that draft with those redlined. So then my question is, between getting that and our first reading of it, should we individually contact EA, Mike, both of you, or do we need to talk about any revisions in first reading? I'm always just want to make sure that, you know, and if we give you ideas for revisions Is it something that maybe if we give it to you by a certain time, it can go out to council for consideration as far as maybe council proposed idea? I just want to be clear, because, you know, when we get the ones from, this is personal to me, but when we get the ones from Code Review Committee, I've been able to be part of that process where we kind of get it where we want it. So I just want to know maybe clarity so that we all kind of come into this with the same expectations.
This is what I suggest, and Guillermo, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was that many changes at a BBAA. They've looked at this ordinance basically 2 or 3 times. The draft that, I didn't realize we were gonna give you a draft today, which is fine. But the draft that I kind of polished off today is either 21 or 22. And so we've had it kind of in the books, and then it's gone to them a couple times. They've had different members on it. I don't think what they're adding or revising is that much, certainly
So we could just start
substantively.
with this draft, you're saying?
I think we can. We'll note, if you want a list of the specific changes over the years that I mean, there's 2. So it's not a big deal. We can cite those, and get you a polished copy, certainly, 10 days before the first reading. And I think it'll be clear.
And that's fine, but more, I guess my question's more about what do we do with it from the time of now or when we get the
I
revision
think if
until
there are
council.
major policy components that you want revisions to, we'd like to try to get some consensus on that from the group today. If you generally feel good about moving forward, we're proposing a timeline of bringing this back to you potentially as early as April 11th, unless you tell us to hit the brakes. And so, if you all direct us on that, we're gonna get that draft to you. And then, if there's some minor tweaks that you have at first reading, that's fine, but we wanna know today if you've got major policy pieces that we need to try to incorporate, or if we need to research, or. So we do have junk vehicle, we can go ahead and start moving to that, and that kind of, we've built both of these presentations kind of together, because they're similar topics, and so we can kind of go through that and then wrap up, with our timeline discussion.
So this ordinance, the junk vehicle ordinance, was last updated on November 27th, 2001. So you can see these are 2 ordinances that date quite a few years, and so they do need a polishing up. This ordinance, we are changing completely. It is a complete rewrite, and it is also moving from Chapter 102, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 11, to Chapter 46, Environment, under Article 4. We think and we believe that this is a better fit, just because when you look at a junk vehicle, it has the potential of impacting the environment. If you have a junk vehicle that's leaking all over the place and has oil underneath it, it has the potential of impacting a lot of different environmental components. So we thought that this would be a good move to this section here. And so, again, I did the same thing on this page and the next page as to where the major changes are. So the current ordinance, as you can see, basically covers 102-461 definitions, 462 abatement of junk vehicles, that's the procedure itself, and then the other sections are just reserved. So there's really only 2 major sections in the current ordinance. In the new ordinance, you will see where 4671 talks about junk vehicle declared to be a public nuisance, talks about section of enforcement, applicability, offenses, junk vehicle, where they're prohibited on public property, where they're prohibited on private property. And then I kind of left some that are not highlighted in here because they're covered in that section of the procedure. And then again, the 4683, which is a notice to the state, that's also included in the new ordinance. So a lot more information on it, but it's a complete rewrite. So public nuisance, this didn't exist before. This is now defined in the new ordinance. Definitions, that did not exist in the previous ordinance. I'm sorry, the definitions did exist, but we have these specific definitions were added. The city manager, a collector, an enforcement authority. And then before, we just had this one definition of junk vehicles. We've expanded on that definition of what a junk vehicle is. From an enforcement side, this does not exist in the current ordinance. This section identified that the enforcement authority can enter on private property and most importantly identifies that the municipal court has the jurisdiction of conducting a hearing and issuing order. So that's very helpful for us on when we go, in this case, Donna, when she's addressing a junk vehicle, it can be addressed in municipal court. Applicability, this is another section did not exist. This section reinforces state and local laws with regard to the removal of a vehicle left on the public property. This section does not exist in the current ordinance as well, which is prohibited on public property. This section outlines the offense and fees. It lists the conditions in which a vehicle may be considered a junk vehicle. Again, this section did not exist, prohibited on private property. This section does not, this new section clarifies that junk vehicle is prohibited on the private property. This section does not exist in the current ordinance. The new section clarifies that junk vehicles are prohibited on private property. The defense of prosecution, this section provides clarity as to what is not an offense. An example would be Section 4. Section 4 allows for an owner to cover a vehicle with the proper vehicle cover, as long as that cover does not have major tears or have parts stored underneath it where they're visible from the street. We would not be able to say that it is a junk vehicle. If, however, the cover is severely torn or is in a state that allows staff to clearly identify it as a junk vehicle, then staff would then address it. To me, you know, I have some antique vehicles that I have, and having them properly stored is very important, and having the proper cover is important to not only protect the vehicle, and so that's why we made an argument that that should be included on there, because there's some vehicles that are just stored in a certain manner. They don't have room in the garage or wherever it may be, but having a proper cover over it, you know, gives it the ability for the individual to continue working on the vehicle or just store it in that manner. The proposed section provides clarity as to what is required in the notice, and that's the contents of the notice. Vehicle on public property, again, that's covered again, but this new section clarifies whom is to be notified in the vehicle, if the vehicle is on public property. The hearing, the proposed section provides instructions on how the public hearing will be conducted in municipal court. This section here, removal, provides detailed instructions when the city is required to dispose of nuisance vehicles. The city is authorized to move the vehicle for disposal, or that the city may operate its own disposal site. In the city of Kerrville, there is no suitable place to dispose of the vehicles. We would recommend at this point in time moving the vehicle to the city yard as a temporary hold, and then working with a contractor or whomever from San Antonio or from another location to come pick up that vehicle and dispose of it. And then, of course, once it's been removed, we're obligated by the state to contact them when we have removed the junk vehicle, and this allows them to know that the vehicle has been destroyed and it cannot be used for, allows them to take it off the books, in other words, not registered anymore, so it doesn't allow them to reconstitute that vehicle. So our approval timeline, this is the only difference here is the February 23rd to BBA recommendations. The junk vehicle ordinance did not go to them because they do not oversee preview of that, but the unsafe structure went to BBNA on February 23rd. We're presenting it to you today in a council workshop, and our proposal is for having the first reading on April 11th, and then consequently the second reading on April 25th, and then for us to start working in June timeframe with the various homeowners and owners of potential junk vehicles as well.
Okay, so are junk vehicles allowed on private property or not?
They are not allowed on private property.
Okay, so let's say you have a neighbor who has a junk vehicle sitting in his yard, it's been sitting there for years. Do you notify them to do something with it, or?
Yes.
And how much time do they have to do something with that vehicle before it gets?
Well, we would still go through the code enforcement process, which is outlined here as well. Is basically, Donna would make contact with the homeowner or whoever the vehicle belongs to and to say, hey, you have a junk vehicle that is on your property that needs to be addressed. She typically gives them 7 to 10 days, depending on the situation, as a first notice. And then the second notice goes out if they haven't done anything with it. And she tries to work with them as much as possible. Then at a certain point in time, it gets to become a citation. And then at that point in time, it moves into municipal court. And so we kind of try to use that same process in this ordinance. And there might be some little changes, but overall.
And remember, we have about 99% compliance outside of the court process, and so our staff works very diligently with individuals on their individual circumstances. These changes are really for, a handful of cases where we get that are very extreme. And they have circumvented, through some antique
Right.
vehicle laws
Yeah.
to basically create some junkyards in
Yeah.
the backyard.
Yeah, and, I mean, what I see is that they say, well, I'm working on this vehicle, I'm repairing it. But, I've never known it to take 3.5 years to repair a vehicle, and it's still sitting there. And now, this is all, again, complaint-driven, so somebody has to actually call and say, hey, I've got a junk vehicle next door, it's been there for years, I'm filing a complaint. And that's what keys code enforcement to come out and either cite or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
And ultimately, if we're not able to gain compliance through the code enforcement process, again, due process, right? It's private property, and so it goes in front of a judge,
Okay.
and a judge gets to decide
Okay.
the next steps that are taken.
Okay.
Council, I'm thinking, let me know if you agree, I'm thinking we're not gonna be ready for April 11th for reading.
I'm kind of thinking the same thing.
That
Thank you.
I think that you're going to want more time to look things over, and ask some more questions.
Certainly the purview of the council, like I said, we're ready, based off y'all's feedback today, to get drafts with a few minor edits from BB&AA, and then anything you all have today, and get those out to you guys. We are totally at y'all's schedule. This was one of your top tier council priorities that you identified last May, and so, here it is.
Yeah, could I also maybe just throw out the idea of, since we are at least 2 weeks before the next reading, which is kind of what we've said as a parameter, that maybe if there are some major things that come up with council at first reading, then we table the first reading until the following meeting, because I really don't know that I'm gonna find anything major or not right now. I kinda doubt I'll find anything personally that I have major issues with, but I just haven't, I mean, if we look at from now until the next meeting, we have at least 2 weeks. But that's just another thought, but, I'm, whatever direction council wants to take is fine with me. Either way.
Okay, this end, what, thoughts?
I think Ken makes a good point. If during our first reading, we have major problems, we could always table it for later. I don't anticipate finding anything in here that,
Well, and I think if everyone would, quickly, as soon as you've got things, we get them to you, so that we don't wait for everything to be done, at that first reading.
Absolutely. And if you have questions, we certainly can, try to address those between now and then, and, if there's some major policy pieces that we need to research further, we can bring that to you at first reading.
Okay?
Yeah.
Can everybody live with that and be comfortable?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I think
Okay,
that's
all
a good
right,
suggestion.
then we'll go ahead with April 11th, but it's our responsibility to get these, anything major, let's get them to them ASAP,
understood.
okay?
Get them to staff, and then will we discuss this at the first reading, or how do you want to go about that?
Yeah, if there are items, we'll bring it back to this group to discuss, right? And based off what those items are, we may begin to draft some language that we could recommend to you all for y'all's policy
Yeah,
discussion.
I mean, I think where we, as you were saying, where we want to be proactive is if any of us, myself or anyone else, has questions or issues, to get it out in front of you guys for research and review, so that when we come to first reading, you're presenting us with the information that we need, because otherwise we'll be at first reading without, I mean, if there's some issues that haven't been researched by staff, then we're gonna kind of be stalemated. So I guess that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, the more in advance we can have them, the more time we have to be able to look into it. Then we can also highlight potentially, some of those policy items within the agenda bill, and that way you can begin to, digest that and be
Yeah.
ready for your policy discussion on the 11th.
So let's just make sure we do our part here, get it to staff in time.
Understood.
Send it directly to you, and then you can
We'll
parcel it
distribute-
out to where
I'll
it needs to
distribute it from
go.
there. Perfect.
And we pick up the phone and call if we need to talk about it a little bit more, so,
Absolutely.
okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank y'all.
A lot of hard work from code enforcement.
Yes.
For a number of years, and our city attorney's office in drafting this, as Mike mentioned, so
And city attorney, thank you.
Yes.
we look forward to getting this one.
Yeah, I think it'll be
Yeah.
really
Adopted by
good.
the
I know
US.
that it's gotta be frustrating for you guys when you do have those few people that just don't work with you guys, and it's hard to legally.
Well, I think our biggest thing is we get, as you all have seen in the past, we get frustrated neighbors. And unfortunately, we're regulated by ordinances and processes, and so those neighbors have typically put up with it for a long time before they
Yes.
even contact us.
And then they're really mad.
And then they're frustrated that we can't move quicker, and we're bound by the due process, so.
Okay, thank you all again for that.
If I could say one thing, I also want to clarify too, Mr. Hayes, I think you may have provided this information. This isn't something that we're just doing just to do. I mean, a lot of this stuff is forced by us because state statute has kind of changed in some of these areas, and so it kind of forces the city just to make some adjustments to make sure we're, one, in compliance with them, and then also two, being proactive in our own city to make sure we're enforcing things properly.
Both are really interesting issues, because we're a home rule city, we can do what we want to, subject to limitations by state law, but in these cases, both have chapters within various codes of state law that apply. So if you're a city like us that wants to get in this business, and we have, obviously, Guillermo referred to it, we have a substandard building ordinance now, we have a junk vehicle ordinance now. And so we're in that business, but then we have to give deference, obviously, to state law, and so there's an interplay there. And again, it's a fascinating issue, because you don't know whether to dump all of the state law into your code or not, and then the junk vehicle code in state law, for instance, gives us the right to define junk vehicles the way we want to, as long as it includes their definition. So you can get a little tighter than state law. And we tried, if you notice state law, we tried to make the definition a little, tried to make it a little clearer, because I think the state law definition is really hard to track. And so you'll see in ours that there's different levels and stuff, but I think that works better, in my opinion. But you're exactly right. I mean, I spoke too long on your issue, but
Good. I appreciate
it's an interesting issue. It's fun to work through, and I do think that over the years, it's not like we haven't been in this business. We've applied these codes, and we get 99% plus compliance. But you always worry about, and there have been state law provision changes, and then big court cases, Supreme Court cases that have talked about, hey, cities, if you're going to take someone's property and knock it down, you have got to give them as much due process as you can. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
And let me just say one more thing. So we'll get you a clean draft. We'll get you the changes that BBA made, and then I'll provide a little bit more background too on kind of the legal standing for some of these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, executive session? Okay. All right, we need a motion for workforce housing development projects. I'll make a motion. 551.071 and 551.087. Do we have a second?
Second.
Brenda has seconded. All in favor? Right hand, thank you. And at 5:10, we will recess into executive session upstairs.